Hi there, welcome to today's session of Every Mark Matters with myself, Mr. McDonald. Today we are going to have a look at Edexcel History Paper 2, The American West. And our question of the day is an easy question, but I think a really tricky topic. And our question of the day is explain the importance of the Johnson County War for relations between homesteaders and cattlemen. So first and foremost, let's break apart this question so we know what it's actually looking for and what Edexcel want us to do with this type of question. So to begin with, we'll have a look at the command phrase. And the command phrase with this question is explain the importance. What that means is you've got to say, in essence, well, why is this event important? But it's marked and structured the exact same as an explain why. So if I'm honest with you, this question is basically explain why. Just to save time, I'm not going to bother writing Johnson County War. I'm just going to put JCW, Johnson County War, was important for relations between homesteaders and cattlemen. That's all this question is. Explain why it's important. Alright? It's dead easy and it's structured and marked the exact same ways and explain why. You might find out of paper 1, the other half of paper 2 and paper 3. Okay, right. So let's begin to think about what is the focus of this question. And hopefully you've already worked it out. The focus of this question is the Johnson County War. Okay? So why don't you now press pause to begin to think about what you know about the Johnson County War. And I want to focus on this word relations as well. How does it affect relations between homesteaders and the cattlemen? Okay? So why don't you press pause, think about what you know about each one of these, and if you're struggling, have a look at a textbook, a revision guide, your history book, or an online resource. Press pause, and I'll see you shortly. Okay, welcome back. Right, so I'm just going to think, let's just do a quick reminder. So I'm going to put JCW up here. So remember, this is where you've got WSGA, that's the Wyoming Stock Growers Association. They think that the homesteaders are cattle rustling. Could put HS, are cattle rustling. Alright? And remember, we've got the deaths of Jim Watson and Ella Averill that start all of this. These are people who are accused of cattle rustling. And we also have this whole, we've got 22 gunmen being paid by the WSGA. They've got a list of 70 names. So for me, I think this whole thing is important for relations. Is because what it does is it shows the role of vigilantism, which I hope is a word, And what I mean by that is that the WSGA think that the homesteaders are stealing cattle. So what I'm curious as to, why didn't they just go to the local, why didn't they just go to the sheriff or the police force or the law and order force, So this really is an example of them paying, these 22 Texas gunmen with a list of 70 names to take out these 20 people, the people of Johnson County. And, a prime example is you've got a shootout at KC Ranch, where you have the homesteader Nate Champion. He's dead. He's killed here. Nate Champion. Again, you have another shootout at TA Ranch, and this is where they're surrounded by the residents of Johnson County. Ironically, the sheriff gets involved, and they round up and they lock them in the TA Ranch, where they're trapped in there until the US Army saves them. And then, for me, this whole thing, in my view, is important. Yes, it's about the role of vigilantism. Yeah, the story's quite interesting, but I actually think it's a prime example of rich versus poor. And the reason why I think that is you've got the trial, which the WSGA uses their money to make it last forever, uses their wealth to make it last long. And alongside that, you've also, it's just this constant example of the rich taking advantage of the poor. Okay, right, let's have a look. So we've got a bit of an idea here. We know what the question wants us to do. We know the knowledge that it wants us to do. Let's begin to think about, well, like, what do Edexcel want us to do? What do the exam board want us to do? And we'll have a look at the second order concepts. And in this concept, or in this particular question, it is importance. So super simple. All you are going to make sure that you use definitely in this question is this was important because. Super simple. Okay? Now this is an 8-mark question. That means what you need to do is you need to spend 10 minutes writing down 2 paragraphs. Okay? This question is marked literally the same as an explain why. So you will have AO1 and AO2. AO1 is knowledge. AO2 is explanation. This particular exam paper, the others are marked 1, 2, 3, and 4. This one is just marked as 1, 2, and 3. I always get it wrong. So today I'm going to get it right. So we'll have a look at level 2 and 3 for this question. All right. But as I said to you, I really want to express the marks as the exact same ways and explain why. So when you're answering it in the real exam, conceptually it's the same as an explain why. So for level 2 or level 3 and an explain why, all you need to do is 2 facts per para. For level 3 is you need 2 precise facts per para. Level 2 explanation, what you need to do is you just need to make sure you've got 2 sentences of explanation. For level 3 is you need to have 3 sentences of explanation. Okay, and that is how, why, so what. Okay, right. And again, just to clarify what I mean by that, so let's just say you're picking any reason. When we're going for how, all right, that is how did X lead to Y? Why did X lead to Y? So what? I always imagine a sassy teenager saying this to me. Well, why is it important? And why is X important? And what I mean by X, that is your answer. That is your reason. So it doesn't matter what you're saying. If you're referring to rich versus poor, how did how did the concept of rich versus poor lead to or affect the relations between homesteaders and cattle barons? Why did the concept of rich versus poor affect the relations between homesteaders and cattle barons? Right, 10 minutes. Press pause, put all distractions away, and have a go at answering this exam question where you explain the importance of the Johnson County War of 1892 for relations between homesteaders and cattlemen. 10 minutes, set a timer on your phone or wherever, and take the time now to have a go at answering this question. 10 minutes, I'll see you shortly. Okay, welcome back. So hopefully there you've spent 10 minutes having a go at answering this question, explaining the importance of the Johnson County War for relations between homesteaders and cattlemen. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to self-assess my own, and I'm going to suggest you do this as you go. And what I'm going to do is I am going to annotate AO1, which is your knowledge, AO2, that's your explanation. Okay, so just to begin with, let's have a go. I'm going to read out my answers. I'm conscious of my really ugly handwriting. One reason why the Johnson County War was important for relations between cattlemen and homesteaders was the power of vigilantism. There's AO2. This was when the WSGA hired 22 AO1, 22 gunmen to kill 70 people of Johnson County. In fact, there's a lot of AO1 plus over here. Which they believed to be cattle rustling. These gunmen were paid $5 a day, along with $50, loads of AO1 here, for every individual they killed. So there's my first fact. So that's fact number one. I've presented a reason, I've backed it up with my second fact. I also know, right, so a great phrase for presenting knowledge or describing knowledge, I also know. I've also missed out. This was when, again, a really good way of describing what happened. I also know that after a shootout between a gunmen and 400 armed residents at TA Ranch, the legal system failed to punish the vigilantes or the WSGA. Right, here's my second fact. So, what I now need to do is, because again, I've got AO1 here, and I've got loads of AO1 here, so loads of precise knowledge in my answer. What I now need to do is hopefully go on to my explanation. So let's have a quick look. I'm looking for how first. This shows the terrible relationship between the two groups, as both sides are using violence, but no true form of justice was possible for either side. There's the how. So how does it affect relations? How does vigilantism affect relations? Well, they're both using violence, so it's not getting any better as a result. So I like this shows. That's a great explanation. Let's have a quick look at my explanation of why. As a result, conflict and rivalry between the two groups increased following national media attention. The war was viewed as David versus Goliath. There's my why. So what I've done there is I've gone how, why. This was important because the war encouraged the nation to side with local residents of Johnson County and oppose the wealthy cattle barons. So what? And you'll notice again what I've done is I have used the language of the question. I've said why it's important. Alright? Another reason, so going on to my second paragraph. Another reason why the Johnson County War was important for relations between cattlemen and homesteaders was the concept of rich versus poor, or power versus the powerless. So there's my AO2. I've just presented the reason. For example, again, I love this phrase, for example, for a way of presenting the knowledge that we have. For example, prior to the war, cattle barons could use their wealth and power to take advantage of the Homestead Act. So again, AO1. And claim land with the best water and create a checkerboard system to split up land in Johnson County, making it impossible for homesteaders to survive. So loads of knowledge there with my first fact. So there's my first fact there. Whereas homesteaders, so you notice that this first fact is about the cattle barons. Let's have a look at the homesteaders, what they did. Whereas the homesteaders who struggled financially took advantage of maverick law. So there's AO1 plus. That's maverick law is basically when you claim a cattle that hasn't been branded yet. Took advantage of maverick law and claimed unbranded cows before the WSGA could claim them. Right, here's my second fact. Okay, so I've backed it up. Here's the concept of rich versus poor. Here's my first fact about what the WSGA or the cattle barons were doing. Here's what the homesteaders or the poor were doing. Let's explain how it affected the relationship. This led to conflict between the two groups, as the WSGA accused the homesteaders of cattle rustling, leading to the deaths of, just flicking on to the next page, Jim Averill and Ella Watson, whereas the homesteaders accused the WSGA of choking them out of the best resources. So there's my how. As a result, shootouts at the KC Ranch and TA Ranch led to a lengthy trial, which the WSGA used their wealth to make it last for longer than the homesteaders could afford. There's the why. This was important because it shows the power divide between the two groups. So what? So if I just flick back to our little success criteria that we've created here, where we've based off entirely off the mark scheme, have I got 2 precise facts in every paragraph? Yes, I have. Have I got how, why, so what in every single paragraph? Yes, I have indeed. So what that means, ladies and gents, is this question is 8 out of, or this answer here is 8 out of 8. Have a go and take the time to self-assess your own work, and I look forward to reading it in person. Thank you. Take care. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.